I'm just interested to know what your feeling about the current situation is and where you think things should be going. I know in particular that you think people should actually be looking at ways of not only obviously essentially making their buildings life safe, but actually making the preserving some of the fabric as well.
Well, if you make the property safe from fire, then you automatically protect the people. But better still, it makes you're not going to lose your asset. You're not going to have to rebuild your business or rehome, you know, if it's your house that's burnt. And I think we've been pushing the margins too tight, that we're trying to build too cheaply and maybe too adventurously, the wrong word. I have said before that in effect we've been running a real-time, real-world experiment in modern building materials and techniques. We're putting stuff up that we don't know how it will behave en masse in fire. The testing that was mentioned by others during the discussion, we're not testing all of the elements in all of the ways that they might be used. And then indeed, of course, they may be misused or misunderstood and misapplied. So I think we need to leave ourselves a better sort of margin of error when we're putting up buildings. One reason I'm an advocate of sprinklers is they are effectively a firefighter, you know, on duty 24/7.
Yes.
So if things do go wrong, they stop it from getting worse.
Why do you think people are not putting sprinklers in automatically? Is it just that they don't want to spend the money and they don't realize how much it could save them?
Yes, the phrase value engineering you hear a lot. So what I think that means is basically strip it to the bone and see if it'll still work. And that goes against what I said earlier. I think we need a better margin in our buildings. I think people misunderstand sprinklers. They think there's a lot of myths and misconceptions. I'm amazed that they're still around, including, you know, I have to say with architects and people in the built environment, you know, in the building construction trades. They think they all go off at once. They think the water damage will be awful. I had it with Windsor Castle when I was the chief of Royal Berkshire. You know, the royal household were loath to put in sprinklers because they said it would, you know, water damage to the property. This was before '92 when it burned.
Right.
And of course, you can recover stuff that's damp. You can't recover stuff that's ash.
Yes.
So for all these reasons, I think people misunderstand sprinklers. They think they cost more than they are. They don't realize how effective they are. They are one of the most effective means of fire suppression, of fire safety, if you like, because they're depends on what you're looking at, efficiency or effectiveness, but, you know, 95, 98%. I take a medicine that was that good.
Yes. What about, should this be carrot or stick? Should we be encouraging people to install sprinklers, or should we be legislating that they must do so?
A bit of both. And I think, I mean, clarity would help. At the moment, you can have a 30-meter tower story. It would have to be sprinklered if it was residential, but not if it was a hotel. Yeah? Or student accommodation, it wouldn't have to be sprinkled. So there are some anomalies in the current guidance. I think from everything I'm hearing, they're talking about sprinkling above 11 meters. Now that actually has some foundation in the real world. We can't fight fires. It's more difficult to fight fires in buildings above 11 meters because our ladders, etc., just won't reach that far effectively. So if you have a building above 11 meters sprinklered, then it makes the fire services life a lot easier, and it means that the people in that building are better protected.
Anything else that you'd like to see changing?
Well, in the legislation, I think we have rules in the building regulations. We have requirements for property protection. For example, you've got to take measures to reduce the effect of flooding. Yes. That's why some of the electrics are now higher up in the building, etc., etc. So the concept of property protection seems to be accepted within the building regulations and the Building Act, but not for fire. Now, I've long been saying that it's approved document B for a reason. A is structural, the building should stand. B, yes, it shouldn't burn. Or if it does burn, the fire should be controlled.
Mm. And you're waiting to see that change?
I think it's coming. The clarity of the regulation is good and necessary, but then as we talked about earlier, you need effective enforcement.
Yes.
You're aware of the triangle of fire, you know, fuel, heat, air.
Yes.
I've got a triangle of fire safety, which is competence, regulation, and enforcement.
Right.
And if you have those three things, then you shouldn't have the fire. Or the fire won't be able to you should control the fire and have a very small one that doesn't really impact on you. One of the things we've been doing with the Business Sprinkler Alliance is looking at what we call sprinkler saves, because as we were talking earlier, a really large commercial fire or fire of any type gets headlines. The fact that sprinklers put a small fire out and the factory is still working, is back to work 2 hours later, isn't news.
No.
You know, what's the old saying? If it bleeds, it leads. So we see all the bad news stuff. What we don't realise is how effective the sprinklers are when they do work. And that's part of the misunderstanding that we talked about earlier, that people don't really understand how good sprinklers are, how cheap they are. I mean, was it £2.50 per square metre?
That was quoted, yes.
Yeah. I mean, people pay more than that for their carpet, for their office carpet.
Yes.
And that only lasts 5 years.
Yes.
You've got sprinkler systems that have been, have acted, you know, have operated effectively after 100 years.
Oh, really? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's interesting, is because we talked about things like passive fire protection and the fact that it doesn't last forever and you have to factor in changing it. Presumably with sprinkler systems, it's mostly that you have to factor in regular maintenance, do you?
Regular maintenance, you do have to replace the heads occasionally. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's 5 years or so, maybe more, 10, I think. Water mist, you have to replace the heads more often because being very fine heads, they can get clogged. So, but I thought that was an excellent point. I think it's Ahmad made it, an excellent point, that we should look at the lifetime costs of the systems in the building. Because when you do that, sprinklers often pay off because they give you design freedoms. They allow the user to have, you know, longer travel distance, fewer doors, fewer compartments.
Yeah.
Point that has been made before. When you compartmentalize, what you're effectively saying in the building is, I am willing to lose everything inside that compartment.
Yes.
And people don't think like that. They think, oh, well, you know, the fire will go, you know, won't be big. And in any case, the fire brigade will arrive. Well, you know, we've got to rock out of the station, turn up, find out what's happening, often break our way in. And by that time, it's probably taken the compartment. You know, we can't save anything on the compartment. Plus the fact compartmentalization doesn't always work. We've seen buildings that should have been compartmented that weren't.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much.